Hey, everybody, welcome to the Unconventional Therapist Guide to Nothing. My name is Dave, and I'm joined here with my co host, Greg. Greg,
Hmm.
what is up?
I'll tell you what's up. My son dipped into the bonus episodes and my younger son and listened to a little bit about zombies, which is
Uh oh.
yeah. So for whatever reason, that's a subject that is terrifying to him. And I told him maybe on the Patreon or maybe a bonus episode, we'll do like an episode on zombies. There's a lot of interesting stuff there, like how they could be real. I don't want to say that. They're not real. I gotta tell him that.
Well, I just
Also,
I just got super nervous because I was just thinking about maybe the language that we use on some of
oh no, whatever. The language we use on this is the language I use in my life. So
the. Okay.
here it is. You know what I mean? But I always thought that would be an interesting
Did
subject,
did he
anyways.
come back with some interesting thoughts about fatherhood?
He's like, yeah, 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 on the fatherhood, but like zombies, is that a thing? I'm like, no, don't worry about it. I don't, unless you're like getting the toxin from like a puffer fish, and there's a combination of things that could happen.
I mean, we can
Uh,
look at the origin of zombies. Did we already do that, though?
I don't think so.
We didn't do that. Oh, that's an
Mm-mm.
October episode.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
I
yeah,
thought
it
we
could be.
covered it a little bit when we talked about hoodoo, but maybe I'm or
Maybe.
voodoo.
Maybe. It was hoodoo, but yeah, maybe.
Did we ever do a voodoo episode either?
We did a hoodoo episode.
I
And
know
we
we
did a
did.
Marie Laveau episode.
Oh, okay, that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Wow, I really thought we talked about some of the origins of zombies.
We didn't.
Interesting.
And that could be cool, like even pop culture wise. Now we're not
You know,
talking about
it's interesting. The other day, I was thinking like, oh crap, I got to start thinking about the October lineup. I'm getting excited.
that's the most important time of the year. And not far after that is the Christmas lineup,
Oh yeah,
which is also important.
Christmas
And
traditions.
yeah, check into those past episodes because those are great any time of year.
Yeah.
Dave, I'm gonna get into this a little bit, all right? Because I think that in the past episodes, it's hard to remember everything we covered, but we talked about the importance of monitoring the stories we tell ourselves. That's an obvious thing that we do as therapists, and we try to do that as people, right? We can make connections that are not actually there to confirm some, I don't know, negative belief about ourselves exists. Like we definitely do it in relationships. I know that like most famously probably in Othello, that whole like he sees that handkerchief and he's like, "Oh, Desdemona cheated on me," and I know that for sure now because I see this handkerchief. And that connection is just not really there. It's just a story he kind of created for himself.
Yeah.
Just being relatable, talking about Shakespeare. But we sometimes see the world through distorted lenses. We all know that, right? And we change the story to create like unwanted circumstances. Now, Dave, bear with me here. What would you call a collective cognitive distortion that could affect huge masses of people, but does not quite rise to the level of mass hysteria? Because when I was talking about this a little bit, I'm like, oh, are we stepping on the toes of mass hysteria a little bit in this episode?
Mm.
But to me, the difference is if you take it on like a micro level, it rests in the difference between creepiness and terror. So terror would be like mass hysteria. What we're talking about
Greg,
is,
wait.
yeah, sorry.
I feel like you started this by asking me a question and then never letting me answer it.
Yeah. Yeah,
I'd
go ahead.
I'd call it conspiracy theories.
Ah, yeah. And that's
Who
the
who
subject
asks a
today.
question
I know.
and then gives three more sentences following and then never
Really.
goes back to the actual question?
If I'm, you know what's sad? It's like I'm kind of like this in real life too. And
Oh,
that's what
we
it must
know.
be hard to be around me.
We
I have to be,
know.
I have to be aware of that, you know?
Can I share the story I just told you right before we started airing? I feel
Sure.
like
Yeah.
that's funny. This is
Yeah.
this is because these things kind of encapsulate what it's like to be in Greg's life in any kind of form. I was talking to another therapist. He's an intern therapist, and he was actually talking about Grimm's fairy tales, and he heard that we did an episode on that, and he was saying how he's interested and he's doing some project related to it. And I said, well, you should really talk to Greg because he's super into the Grimm fairy tales and like did most of the heavy research on that episode, I would say. And he goes, yeah, that'd be awesome if I could catch him for more than 2 minutes. And I said, yeah, that's why I have to schedule an hour a week with him.
That's right. That's right. Hey, look, we're Dave, you're no less busy. And I mean, what's the conspiracy on that? Like, I love this idea of this unsettling little story, this sometimes dangerous, like, what if fun game. Like, it kind of reminds me how we talked about superstitions because it's like this very adaptable belief. But like, so it's like you can imagine the little hunter-gatherer who's thinking of term in terms of
Wait, are you talking
better
about
safe than
conspiracy
sorry.
theories right now, or are we still talking
Yeah.
about you?
No, no, I'm still talking about
You
I'm on
you
to conspiracy
glossed
theory.
over that so
I know,
quickly, and
I know,
then wow, I think I
I know.
struck a nerve with that
I
one.
don't
Sorry,
like to be
sorry,
criticized.
Greg.
No, you're never
Wow.
striking a nerve. You're never striking a nerve. Don't worry about that. But don't you remember how we talked about superstitions and how it was kind of like better safe than sorry, kind of nonsensical belief, but maybe? Like that's kind of like the whole thing, right? But
Yeah.
this is us evolving a little bit further and becoming like societal and developing the ability to confirm that superstition, like with some kind of logic. It's like a really weird thing.
Yes. Yes, it is.
It is.
So Greg, in the past we've talked about the truth, right? And I think the way that we framed it was the truth is unique to each and every one of us, right? It's like the truth is kind of
Mhm.
how I see it versus how you see it.
And both
Unless
and
it's
both
like,
said things could be true.
yes, unless it's like a factual situation, right? There are some
Mhm.
things that there's tangible evidence or visual evidence or some sort of evidence that shows that it's true. And that's what we would call fact, right?
That is, I'm gonna let you walk away with it just for the sake of defining fact. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So
Because like there's some facts that are like a diamond is soft until you pick it up. I mean, we don't know if that's a fact or not. That
I
could
don't
be.
think that I think that's a hypothesis.
Okay, right?
How can that
So
be fact, right?
right. So like, but it's also not untrue.
Right. See that? All right. So here,
Yeah.
or it's a theory. So all right. Here we
Okay.
go. Here we go.
Yes, theory. Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Fact. Something that is. This is the definition
Okay.
of fact. Something that is known to have happened or to exist, especially something for which proof exists or about which there is information.
Okay.
That's a actually that definition didn't really back it as strongly as I hoped, but I think that there has to be some sort of proof or evidence, I think, in order for
Yeah.
something to be fact.
Some kind of
Something that's not,
consistency to
and
it.
it's not, you can't argue it, right?
Right.
I think that's the
Right.
biggest thing. You couldn't argue it because there is fact and evidence. I mean,
Okay.
there's proof and evidence. Theory, a formal statement of the rules on which a subject of study is based or of ideas that are suggested to explain a fact or an event, more generally, an opinion or explanation. Those last few words are it kind of sum it up,
Yeah.
an opinion or explanation. But it's, it typically will have some substance to it, some related
Almost like
thoughts.
how like an urban legend is a well, it has a little bit of that. Maybe it could be true. I like the word explanation attached to this
Right.
because that's what we're trying to do, right? Explain a certain
That's
situation
what it's all about.
in a different sort of way, or maybe what seems to some people a more likely way. Well,
I
you know what I mean? It's like we'll get into all that.
or but the thing that I think people are forgetting
Okay.
is fact versus theory.
Hmm.
The people that believe in conspiracy theories are believing in a theory to be true, right? But
Hmm.
there's no fact in this theory yet.
Well, it's
Yet
based on facts. Like you need to have some facts to get to this theory in some way
they loop together a series of facts, but those facts don't actually
to create a
prove
narrative
the
that's
theory.
unproven.
A narrative, correct.
Okay.
All right. So conspiracy theories involve something very important. All right.
Hmm.
And that is a word that you've used 1,000 times on this podcast,
Favorite word.
deception. Right. And it's almost based in the idea that a population of people, a group of people, or everyone is being deceived apart from the person who believes in this theory, right? because they know the truth.
Hmm.
So the methods of deception, they believe, are elaborate, they're complex, ongoing, and they're executed, you know, perfectly. And they are just so well done that none of the rest of the world is able to see it. And that's kind of the basis for a conspiracy theory.
I love that explanation. And I love that you talk so much slower than I do because that really got a chance to sink into my brain because I see it so like it's almost like you see someone who is in a manic episode and they have like these paranoid or grandiose delusions and they think they have the answers to something that makes perfect sense. So it's like they've seen something or they know something or they understand something that no one else does and it's super frustrating. What's scary about this, because most of the time conspiracy theory is just that conspiracy theory. But then like we'll talk later on about sometimes there was those whistleblowers about conspiracies that they were the only one crying out about it. And then it turned out to be true. And then what do we do with that? Right?
Right.
Then it's like a very uneasy place to be,
Absolutely.
you know?
Absolutely. So another common thing with conspiracy theories, and I wanted to blanket this and say all of them, but I guess that wouldn't be true because I think there's some that are probably lower tier or less severe conspiracy theories.
Mhm.
But a lot of them that are really like impactful or just kind of out there kind of have this element of evil at the root of the causation or the perpetrators of the conspiracy, right? And there's some sort of evil reasoning that they're trying to deceive us, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's to control us or to benefit, ruling some population of people or the world, or to have access to things that might be taboo or wrong, and then I'll bring up obviously like those conspiracy theories that have like Joe Biden and Obama and Justin Bieber, drinking babies' bloods and
Yeah.
pedophilia rings and satanic panic stuff, like all those ones that like it's almost like the devil himself is
Right.
like leading it, but no, it's these evil people, right?
Because that's how you like you can see how that could hit someone's sort of it's like an existential thing where it's like, wow, those are like against my highest values. If there's
Right.
any truth to that at all, I'm gonna want to know something
and
about
then
that.
and then there's that kind of makes me feel like a piece of crap because I'm like, yeah, that really didn't bother me at all. So what does that say about my character?
Well, growing up, I remember my there was like this thing I saw. I mean, this stuff was like on the news sometimes when we were kids, which is ridiculous. The early 90s were a wild time in the late 80s, but like certain companies had like evil images on their packaging and whether or not they did that on purpose. That still happens now, but like don't use this toothpaste and I'm like, "Oh God, am I using the wrong toothpaste? Am I supporting something I don't want to be supporting here?" I mean, I that
Monster
stuck with me.
Energy drink. Did we already talk about that before? Monster Energy drink is actually the sign of the devil. Six
See,
six
like
six, I
there's a
believe.
ton of that. But here's the thing about that we're going to see. You can start having this belief, this conspiratorial belief, and then you will, that's how our brains work. And I'll talk more about that later, but you will start to see evidence that supports those beliefs that you
As
have.
soon as you start thinking it
Yeah.
or thinking about it, suddenly you're like, oh
Yeah,
wait,
there it is.
yeah,
It's like when you're thinking about getting a Toyota 4Runner, and then that's the only car on the road all of a sudden.
yeah.
You just start seeing it. It's
It's
wild.
like, wow, birds really aren't real now that I know this.
That bird is moving weird. I don't even know what you're talking about, but I'm just going along with it.
Wait, do you really not know that one?
No, I have no idea. Birds aren't real.
Oh yeah. They're
Shit.
that's actually like, what are they, CIA drones or something like that?
Oh man, all birds?
They
Or
Yeah,
are they?
they went extinct a long time ago.
No, I feel like I would be able to pick out a bird and be like, this bird's this bird's different, you know?
So conspiracy theories also have to be very almost impossibly hard to disprove.
Yeah.
And it's probably harder than most people imagine to argue a conspiracy theory. Because you have to, in order to really argue it with a person who believes it, you have to have that thing we talked about in the beginning, which is the whole reason why it exists, because there is none. You have to have fact
Yeah.
to disprove it. And I know you, like you had said, you stringing together a number of facts, but there's typically no fact that actually set like tangible proof
Right.
that shows, or they will find a way to say that tangible proof was generated by the government to trick us, such as if I were to show someone who's a flat earther a
Yeah.
picture of the shape of planet Earth, they would just tell me that was a computer generated photo that was created to trick us, right?
Yes.
There's no way I could disprove flat Earth, because every argument I would make would have a rebuttal that would just
So
say
here's the
I've
thing,
been
like
being tricked this whole time.
I certainly couldn't disprove flat Earth, but I feel like a pretty good scientist could. Do you know what I mean? Like to a person, like logically, like if someone was like, "Well, tell me how that you can prove that it's round," I'd be like, "Well, I'm gonna have a hard time with that. That's not really my
It would have
area."
to be something with like some sort of gravitational
Yeah,
pull or something that would make sense to a scientist and not a therapist.
yeah.
And
I would say
it,
probably say like curvature a lot. Like if you're in a plane,
and I'm
you
like,
see the
ooh,
the curvature.
get out of here.
You know what I'm talking about?
But
We
I'd
wouldn't
be
be, we
like,
wouldn't have
oh,
all this curvature.
when you look out in the ocean, you can't see the end. Isn't that kind of proof
Well, proof of what?
that
Flat
it's no,
or
it's round.
curvature? Right, yeah.
It's
So,
round.
I
It
mean, but they would
looks.
say, yeah, your eyes see further than you think, buddy.
I'd be like, no, they don't.
Not anymore.
Prove me wrong.
Boy. But like seriously though, so it's dangerous to kind of
Art.
poo-poo all of these things.
It's dangerous to argue with someone who believes in these conspiracy theories,
That's
because
true.
you can't win. You
You
can't
can't
win.
win. You can't win. We're not smart enough to win. And there's also every once in a while, they're true.
Right.
All right, so I'm keep
So
you see me
yeah. So
keep
I mean,
harping
this
on that.
is essentially the things what we're talking about here. This is what they're all about. It's
Yeah.
finding plot holes, or points that would just be incredibly hard to find concrete, solid, 100% tangible evidence to prove, and just using that as the basis for their theory. And it doesn't matter how outlandish it gets.
Yeah.
If you have a population of people that start to think like minded, sort of like mass hysteria, it feels as though you could throw anything against a wall and something's going to stick. And that's
Yeah.
kind of like what's happening with, or was happening. I don't know how active it is today, and just because I don't follow it whatsoever, but like QAnon,
Yep.
there's QAnon believers, followers, I don't know what you would call them, but they'll even say they don't believe in everything that's said, but they do believe in enough to be considered, QAnon followers, I guess.
Yeah.
So, and that's the thing, I guess. Not every conspiracy theorist, I guess, would believe exactly the same thing, which also makes it difficult. And I'm sure that's also starts to get things twisted and um, just all over the place.
It is a little all over the place. It's like
So
any
what?
belief system.
It's like what? Anchovy
Any
system?
like belief system. Like even when you're thinking about like religions and stuff, it's like, you know, I'll see someone who I used to go to church with when we were like kids or something. They'll be like, and I'm like, yeah, I'm still Catholic, but I'm like not that Catholic. And it's like, okay, so you know what I mean? Like it's like
Yeah.
we all have like varying levels of following the same sort of belief still.
I swear to God, I thought you said anchovy system before. And I was like, what?
My anchovy system. Listen,
Anchovy
I've got a
system.
great anchovy system. I'm into Caesar dressing and I'm into I've had pizza with anchovies.
You make homemade Caesar dressing?
No,
Oh, that's too bad.
but I've had homemade. You do need anchovies.
You do. So, what causes people to believe conspiracy theories?
Hmm.
So I think one idea that was probably prominent years ago and has been debunked, or debunked, I should say,
Yeah.
is that people who believe in conspiracy theories have low intelligence, or they're just mentally unwell. And I don't think that's the case at all.
No way.
No, because I know way too many conspiracy theory followers or believers to this day to fully believe that ever. Because a lot of the people I know that believe in these things are actually pretty intelligent people,
Right.
right? Um, so there was a study in Amsterdam that showed that while all of us can be prone to seeing what they call illusory patterns, such
Yep.
as like seeing a face in clouds, this is heightened in among believers in conspiracy theory. So they might see two faces in a cloud, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this just means that they are likely to see apparent connections between events that might seem completely unrelated, or they just they see things that other people might not see, or they can make themselves see things that others don't see, I guess would be a better way to put it. Because like when you see a face in the cloud, you're looking for a face in the cloud.
So there's this thing called pattern perception bias, and I kind of learned a little bit about this because this guy kept coming into the ER with hallucinations, and he just had like macular degeneration. His eyes were leaving him. I've talked about him before. But when because he had like less visual stimuli, his brain was making patterns and trying to make sense of patterns that didn't really mean anything. So he was seeing things that weren't actually there. So, but there's this thing called pattern perception bias, and this is that tendency to perceive meaningful patterns out of like ambiguity. So like this can lead to people who see connections where none exist. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's just like this a little bit more of a I don't know. It's like it's not a lesser thing. It's not an unwell or it's almost like a something that could be completely useful in a different, format. Like it's artistic, it's open-mindedness. It's a lot of these things. It's like seeing, making lemons when you get making lemonade when you get lemons, whatever it is. But like I mean it's just like this kind of adaptive response to like I don't know, it's almost like art in a sense.
You
Right?
know, do you ever get people that tell you that they see like shadows
Yeah.
in their eyesight, in their vision?
Yes.
So I started to get that recently. I don't really know what that is, but you ever get people that tell you they think it's like ghosts,
Of course. Yeah.
right? But again, that's kind of like you connecting to explain something, and we'll get to that more later, I think. But like that's kind of what you were talking with that macular degenerate disease, right? Like they see
Yeah.
they're kind of like you start to try to. It's almost like your brain starts to like try to compute it and make it
Yeah,
understandable.
it's like it doesn't have this full image, but it's got like some pieces of an image and it tries to make sense of it without all that. Like there's like some missing visual stimuli that your brain's like, all right, like we do need to make sense of this though.
Yeah.
It's important that we make sense of this. And this it just does the best it can. And then that's the back of your brain giving you some bullshit and you're like, oh, there's some ghosts over here. You know what I mean?
My
But really, like your eye just has it got
I
old.
just
There's like
I don't
a
know why, but I
scar.
just thought about how hilarious your brain's trying to like we got to make this make sense. It's got to
Yes.
be a ghost.
It's got to be a
Like,
ghost.
oh,
It's got to
that's
be
the
a
most sensible
tiger.
thing I
It's got
could.
to be ants. Like this with this guy was
Yeah.
seeing. Like he's like, there's tigers every, and like it's funny because it's like it was very clearly not a hallucination. He's like, there's just tigers everywhere, and I don't really, I'm pretty sick of it, to be
I'd
honest.
be so mad at my brain. It's like, really,
Oh,
that's the conclusion you're coming to,
I
tigers?
know. It's just like all like sitting
Like
on
I
you
see
and
a
stuff.
shadow and like my brain's telling me, oh, that's Bill Cosby and Ghost Dad. Like, what?
Yeah.
That makes no sense, brain.
Ghost Dad. Wow, that's a pull from the past.
Throwback, right?
Yeah, that's a good one.
All right. So there's also been studies that show that conspiracy believers are also prone to anxiety and that they sense a lack of control um, in their lives or in certain things. But then I've also read that some more recent studies done elsewhere are kind of starting to revoke that thought a little bit because I guess that was kind of a popular idea about the lack of control being something that might make someone lean more towards conspiracy
It's
theories.
almost like an easy way out. It's like a no dumb good thing.
Yeah. But so researchers have found that certain personality traits, such as a sense of antagonism towards others, high levels of paranoia, um, were would make people more prone to believe conspiracy theories. And those who strongly believed in the theories were also more likely to be insecure, paranoid, emotionally volatile, impulsive, suspicious, withdrawn, manipulative, egocentric, and eccentric, and just all around fantastic people.
Yeah, they sound awesome. There's got to be something like, and I don't know if like your stuff comes to it later on, but like, there's got to be something about, say you're living in a country whose government has tricked you a few times, or maybe things aren't going so well, or there's missing money, or there's lack of trust. I feel like that would be something where people would start trying to come up with conspiracy theory to explain the behavior, right?
Yeah,
That
yeah.
would make sense. I
I
bet
mean,
you.
wait, so that just brings up an interesting thought. Conspiracy theories and just general suspicion, two
Mm.
different things, correct? You can be suspicious without assuming. the government is doing these devious plots
Hmm.
to manipulate or trick or deceive an entire population of people, right?
Right.
Like, all right, so for example, politicians. I think we both can agree. We grew up always hearing you can't trust politicians,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And I'm not even trying to like, throw a slight at anyone. That's a general message that was sent, at least to me,
It's
in most of
buried in
my
me.
up. Yeah,
I don't.
exactly.
I
You
don't.
don't trust politicians.
Yeah.
They are, that they will smile in your face and that they, will say whatever they need to do to say to be elected. And that's kind of the belief that
And you
I've
never hear from
always,
him again. Yeah. You know what I mean?
but they leave a toothbrush at your house for some
Yeah.
reason.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
And they
funny.
call you at 2 a.m. on a Friday night.
And
But
Dave, I don't know if we'll get to this, but like there have been times in history where the government of this country and others have used conspiracy theories, like push their own conspiracy to cover up like some very kind of egregious truths or mishaps that like, maybe unintentional mishaps, but they've like, oh, it's better to create a kind of conspiracy. And it's like interesting,
sure,
right?
sure.
So it's that people aren't like quote unquote like stupid for being like suspicious of
Right.
governments.
But I guess my general thought there is you can like having that knowledge, we can be suspicious, but that doesn't mean we're necessarily conspiracy theorists because we have that suspicion. So
Yeah.
conspiracy theory really is a separate entity of itself. And while someone who has like a level of suspicion might be prone to believe conspiracy theories, not everyone who's suspicious is a conspiracy theorist, is
Yes.
the point I wanted to clarify.
Okay.
So there was a study by Shauna Bowes, a doctoral student in clinical psychology at Emory University, and she had this quote: "Conspiracy theorists are not all likely to be simple-minded, mentally unwell folks, a portrait which is routinely painted in popular culture. Instead, many turn to conspiracy theories to fulfill deprived motivational needs and make sense of distress and impairment." And I think that last part right there,
Mm.
for me, is kind of where I see this kind of explanation going. It's to make sense. It's that thing your brain does when something seems awry, when you're having a hard time understanding a situation. It's your way of making sense. And I know we're going to talk about that later, but that was kind of her thought about it. And again, just reiterating that idea, it's not that these people that are big or heavy into conspiracy, and many of our listeners probably are into
Sure.
conspiracy theories. I'm
Sure.
not going to lie, I kind of like conspiracy
Dude,
theories.
I love it.
Yes. So I'm not even like um saying anything about someone who's into it, because there's a part of me that appreciates the hell out of it and also could be prone to accepting some conspiracy theories. I could never get too into them though, because there's a part of me that I kind of hit my limit with some where it's like, I can't go all the way down there.
Too far. Yeah.
Too far.
And here's the thing, something I find really interesting in both my personal life and well, I've seen it come to fruition in my personal life, but I understand how people could be conspiratorial when it comes to big things. So there's like this idea called pattern perception bias. And this is the thing that we believe we think that there has to be something meaningful when like all right, it's this idea that something if something's so big that happens, then there needs to be a really big explanation. I guess that's the best way of putting it. So think 9/11, right? That's why I think like there needs to be this huge explanation instead of just it was just the group of people that, hated America. There's always like this big, no, it's way more than that. That was a huge thing. It's way more than that. And it's like, you see this in government where they've lost a ton of money I've had jobs where like the bosses have just lost a ton of money and then we'd all as employees come up with like conspiracy theories, but really it would be like, no, we just screwed up. You know what I mean? Like there's sometimes,
So yeah, the point you made, I actually pretty much wrote down
yeah,
verbatim the same idea. It's it's our natural instinct to make reasoning of things we don't understand.
yeah,
And at times we might look for answers that fit outside of the box because the ones that are in the box just don't add up. it doesn't sit right. It doesn't feel right. It's why people still question who shot JFK. It's
Yeah.
it's the 9/11 is a perfect example to me. It's really hard for us to just imagine there's people who could so easily get onto a plane, hijack a plane, steer it in the perfect direction, make a perfect contact with a building that makes the amount of destruction that they probably, you know, wanted precisely. And just even just imagining that there's people evil enough to want to do that, to want to destroy
Uh-huh.
that many lives and have that big of an impact on a negative impact on the world. It's hard for us to sit here and say, oh yeah, that all makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and you don't want to believe it's that simple when it's so important. Like, and when you talked about JFK, I'm like thinking to myself for a second, here's this, civil rights are starting to like jump off. The world is sort of really kind of excited about this guy. Very important, could do some really huge things. It can't just be that someone was out of their mind and shot him. It can't,
Yeah,
it's not
yeah.
enough. Like too many people are hurt by this. It's just not a big enough explanation. He deserves better almost.
You
So
know
you
what's
have to make a
funny?
better story.
It's so here's another thing that's kind of a crazy thing. All right. It's so hard for us also to believe it when it goes perfectly. The plan is executed perfectly and their mission is accomplished and it's devastating. But it also, if it doesn't go right, we think maybe that's intentional as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you know what I'm referring to?
No.
I was thinking of like the Trump earshot and the theories that all came spawned from that situation. It's funny because it's like the complete opposite in a way, but similar in how strongly the conspiracy theories like outpoured from the situations.
Sure. Yeah. Like, and then just to like balance it, because we never get politically political here. It's like you would see things that Biden did, and the man was like, clearly old and unwell, and then like but people would kind of have this like, it was like this weird confirmation bias where people would like tell themselves a story that like almost they could not believe what they were seeing. And we do it with everything on both sides of this whole thing. And I think confirmation bias is something that we miss that plays a huge role in this because well, I remember when the Lacey Scott Peterson thing, right? It turns out to be that way. But like, you could think of a million different things. I'm sure that with the Karen Reed, maybe the most recent thing, there's people who are sure she's guilty, and there's people who are sure she's innocent because both developed a belief and both seek evidence that supports that
Wait,
existing belief.
and this one's layered because isn't one of her arguments of what actually happened a conspiracy theory itself,
It is.
right? That
Yeah.
it was a police cover up.
And guess what? Hard to disprove. Right? I mean, even for
And her not guilty verdict showed that.
Yeah, and I think what happened, yes, and that's a whole sort of interesting case in and of itself, on how, you know, how do we even get there with these things? Like, it's so interesting how one group of people can be sure and another group of people can be sure about the same exact thing, opposite conclusions. You know what I mean? Just
Right.
very, very
Look
interesting.
at, I mean, I was going to bring up OJ. I told myself I wasn't going to do it.
Bring up the juice, man. We were
Yeah.
kids.
But I mean, at that time, largest public trial, probably an episode itself at some point in time
Absolutely.
because it brings us back so many memories. So
Yeah.
many memories. But I mean, at that time, heavy in conspiracies and all that stuff, like, the explanations of what happened and,
Yep.
how it could have happened. And then it turned out, not guilty. And then turns out they were wrong.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's like, or then the conspiracy they're saying they had to acquit him because there had just been a riot and they couldn't afford another one, or
Right.
the police were setting him up. There's so many things, right?
There's
It's just
so
like
many things.
there's
Yeah.
so many things. Like people have a need to understand the world around them. That's what we're talking about here. It's a survival thing. And when times are uncertain, coming up with this elaborate explanation or simple explanation can be helpful. It's about regaining a sense of control and sort of camaraderie too with the other people who agree and feel that way
Yeah.
because you're never really alone. Um, Dave, I thought it'd be fun to just give a few examples of conspiracy theories. These are real conspiracy theories
Wait,
that.
just I just want to wrap up. I'm sorry.
Sure, sure, sure.
I'll go right back to that in a second. So we were just talking about what makes people believe them. I had two really quick thoughts about that.
Okay.
So one is, and I think we both kind of just agreed on this, they're fun. A lot of times they're fun until
Yes.
they're not fun. Like when you rabbit hole spiral, they can be exciting. They can be a little bit provocative, right? So it's a way to kind of like provoke someone by saying it like, it's gonna like ruffle some feathers sometimes. Um, and it also can give people this like sense of like I'm smarter than you thing, which I think is a weird dynamic, but I do believe it happens with some people that get heavy into this. It's almost like I know what's really going on in the
Yeah,
world
like
and
you're an
you
idiot.
guys don't.
Like,
Yes,
I do get that. Like I have a friend who I can actually I won't say his name, but like I think he'd
it's
be
Pete.
upset. But no, it's not. This one's not P. But I know I only have. It seems like I only have two or three friends. That's probably true, but maybe I have four. And one's a conspiracy theorist, and it is very like, how do you not see this?
Yeah.
How do
You
you not see this?
idiots.
Yeah, and
Come
I'm like, dude, maybe
on.
I'm like, whatever,
Yeah.
you know?
The last point I want to make is it's really also very easy to see how some people who naturally get hyper focused into things
Mm.
could easily get sucked into conspiracy theories, right? Because they're one of those things where you pull on this one thread and then it just keeps going and going and going. So if you're someone who just ends up, you know, you can easily lose yourself on a topic or go down rabbit holes. Conspiracy theories are like poison for that person, or maybe it's like the best thing for that person in their mind, but it's definitely not the best thing for them socially. So yeah,
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And that's when it becomes a problem, right? When you're
right.
like, it's be
Yeah,
making you isolate and you're losing friends and everything like that. Or maybe it's a good thing if you're gaining a bunch of conspiracy friends.
online,
Don't start any cults.
online
So
in your basement.
here's, Dave, would you rather have me give some examples of regular conspiracy theories or conspiracy theories that turned out to be true?
I want to hear the truth.
Okay. You want to hear
No,
the truth?
actually, give us a couple of regular
Okay.
ones.
So the typical conspiracy theories are like the JFK assassination, you know,
Wait,
th-
who who do you have you is like the conspiracy theory? What have you heard as far as like who killed him?
oh, okay. So the conspiracy theory, it would be despite, the investigations that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone, there is some beliefs that groups like the CIA, the mafia, or even like anti-Castro people, maybe some Marilyn Monroe stuff mixed in there, all kinds of stuff. You know, kind of juicy stuff about JFK. Um,
I heard it was his driver.
what? Really?
Yeah, I forget. I just heard this recently. Someone was saying, and I know who did it. And then he like signaled like he was like shot behind him.
Oh, because that's one magic bullet, right? That's the
Mm-hmm.
whole idea.
Yeah.
That's an episode in itself. The moon landing hoax, of course, we've heard of this, right? Kubrick filmed it. Um, there was the Dreyfus affair, and that was this false
Richard
accusation.
Dreyfuss,
No, not of Jaws fame or
Mr. Holland's Opus.
Mr. Alan Sopas, or what about Bob? Um, it involved this like false accusation of treason against Alfred Dreyfus, a Jewish officer in the French army in the late 19th century, just an anti-Semitic thing. And then of course Watergate was another conspiracy theory. There's more modern ones, Dave.
Pizzagate.
Is Pizzagate like the QAnon thing?
Maybe.
So 9/11 being orchestrated by US government because of the collapse thing. I still don't understand the mechanics behind this. Of course, flat Earth, you've mentioned that. What about chemtrails?
Yeah.
That
And
condensation.
chemtrails and the cell phone towers, right?
Yeah. Well, I know that the chemtrails, like they want us to believe that it's condensation, but what it really is
Weather
s-
modification.
like population control or weather modification, like who knows?
Somebody
Um,
said that to me randomly the other day in like such a matter of fact way, like, the government just can control the weather. And I'm like, yeah, of course.
yeah, give us some sunny days. What about, did you ever hear the one that was Princess Diana's death was not an accident?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's cool. Not cool. That's tragedy,
Oh,
obviously.
all the Tupac and Biggie ones.
all the Tupac, like, the reptilians running the world. That's a little far-fetched, I gotta admit. That one I can't get behind. I'm sorry. The COVID-19 stuff was always kind of interesting that, the virus was a hoax, a bioweapon, maybe, and vaccines were microchips for tracking. That was kind of like, I'm kind of like, maybe, you know what I mean? But I'm not. But I am. I don't know.
Or the
But
population control one was probably the thing that I was like buying the most out of
yeah,
all of
yeah,
it.
yeah,
But then
yeah.
I was like, no,
You're like tough
it's
to
just
disprove, I'll tell you that.
yeah, it's just a bull.
Tough
It's
to
just a
disprove.
thing that still exists and goes around. But
So here's some true ones. Tuskegee syphilis study. I actually watched a movie about that. It's pretty good. But there was like these rumors that the government was conducting unethical medical experiments on African American to sort of study, telling them that it was a placebo, and they were like studying syphilis, but they were really like giving them syphilis, and it was like a real so the conspiracy theory that they were doing that to people was like people were like, oh, I can't believe that, but that was actually true. And then there's MK Ultra, like the
mm-hmm.
CIA trying to do like mind control stuff. That's
Yep.
true.
Isn't that what Stranger Things is kind of
Yeah, Stranger Things, the Men Who Stare at Goats. I don't know if you. That's actually
like
a pretty good movie.
with George
Operation
Clooney?
Mockingbird. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
So the CIA, it's a program. Basically, it's just aimed to manipulate media outlets and public opinion by planting like propaganda and stories and using the media and even churches and things to kind of control public opinion. True, there's a real thing. So that's actually really happening. And then there's a bunch more, like the Operation Paperclip. Um, like that was the idea that after World War II, this was very unpopular, that the United States would recruit German Nazi scientists, right, to kind of um and whitewash their background to sort of help like further the US government as far as like war programs and stuff like that. That's actually true. They did that. So a lot of this stuff. But I think, Dave, because we're running out of time, I think maybe we'll give the idea about a bonus episode being ancient conspiracy theories. Like, what were they sitting around in
Ancient.
robes talking about? You know what I mean?
Right.
That's what I want to know. And I think that'll
That's
be really interesting.
that's what really keeps Greg up at night.
I mean, I'm wondering, because and it's funny though, isn't it funny? We talked about that before, like the more things change, the more they say the same. There was like Plato, literally Plato created a conspiracy theory. So these people 2000 years ago are doing the same exact thing we're doing now, just trying to figure out how to alleviate some of that anxiety that comes with not knowing what the hell is going on and having no
Right.
control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's funny because like we both sound like we're kind of enjoy conspiracy theories. Obviously, we have thoughts about them. I kind of get the sense that like you're maybe more of a believer in them than I.
Yeah, no, I get that sense. I do. I'll tell you what it is. I like a good story. I really do. And some of them are just a good story.
Okay, so here's where we gotta like talk about.
All right.
There's levels to conspiracy theory believers.
Mm-hmm.
There's the casual conspiracy theory person. Like if someone introduces me to a conspiracy theory, I'll entertain it.
I'll
I
entertain it.
listen. I might even watch a whole documentary if someone shares one with me and tells me, like, hey, this really had some good thoughts about this. I remember when I had a friend who got really big into the 9/11 conspiracy theories, and I was like, oh, that's actually kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Let me look into it. And then I don't know if you ever did this, but there was like the airline or the plane number. If you put it into a specific font, which happened to be called like wing nuts or wing bats or
Mm.
something like that,
Yeah,
it gave symbols that actually had like two towers, a plane, and then like a skull or something like that.
that's
And
weird.
it was the wildest freaking thing.
You did
So,
that?
hmm,
You did that? You saw that?
I saw it. Yeah.
Okay, see, that's the thing. Like, I never really got into the research phase of it.
I mean, that wasn't research. That was like a thing that was going around when I was in college. Like
Oh,
we were
wow.
people were
Whew.
like sharing that. So, I mean, I kind of like what you said. I enjoy it for like the story, I guess. I
Mm.
enjoy it for like the intrigue. And I also enjoy it for that idea that like, hey, maybe there's more to life than just surface level, right?
Let's
I
hear
think
let's hear both sides,
yes,
you know?
right? But then there's the next level of conspiracy theory person, the one who goes down rabbit holes, the one who maybe talks about it with or attempts to talk about it with people. Are you that person?
No. No. Not even a little bit.
Okay.
Like I would never yeah. I just entertain all stories and I feel like it's good to hear all sides of things and then kind of like weigh out what
Oh,
makes the most sense
oh,
to
I
work
got a
with.
question for you.
Okay.
Have you ever not done something that maybe was thing that like was something we were supposed to do or was something that society was kind of doing because a conspiracy theory went against it and made you believe something harmful about that thing?
I'm gonna be careful here because maybe. So here's I don't know if it's conspiracy. See, that's the thing. Like, I've never cared enough about a conspiracy to like do any real research
So
on it.
it so has it ever shaped your behavior, your
So
belief in a
yes, and one
conspiracy
time it
theory?
has, and the only time I can think about it, and I don't know if it's true or not, is so I had like the first couple of
Oh,
vaccinations.
I already knew you were going to say that one.
Yeah, and then like after that, there was like saying I don't know if it's conspiracy theory or it's true. You never know what. That's the thing now. There's so much out there that you don't know what's conspiracy and what's true anyway. But like people were like having heart attacks or having heart issues because of the vaccines in higher numbers than, that made sense. And I was like, you know what? Better safe than sorry.
You know, it's funny anytime like a sports athlete or some person that's kind of got a public spotlight on them gets some kind of health condition. If you ever go to the comments in like on a social
Vaccinated.
media post, they'll say, "Oh, that's what the vaccine got you,"
Mhm.
or something like that. It's like,
Yeah. Maybe I heard enough of that and I was like, you know what?
but
Two's
it's
enough.
literally just someone saying it
I know. I know.
with
Look, I
no
know.
scientific evidence to prove that that's what caused that medical condition.
I know.
That's a conspiracy
But
theory
here's the
right
thing though,
there.
right? So here's the thing about today's world. Say there is, and let's just say that like there's put something that's even, hasn't been said yet. Like the flu shot now causes strokes, right? The problem now is if you don't have to be irrational to believe that because you could look online and see like at least seemingly reputable people with, MD next to the name saying that, like confirming that belief. And then you're kind of put in the position of like, huh.
You
You know
know
what I
what's
mean?
and you know what's an interesting thought about that too is a lot of the times when COVID was going on and people were giving their thoughts against kind of like what the general like knowledge was that we were all given, it was people from medical professions I was finding were sharing a lot of that information. I can't tell
Yeah.
you how many nurses I heard that kind of had views that went against all
Yeah, but you
like
can't you
the
kind of can't help
CDC
but be like,
regulations.
let me give that a little extra look. You know what I mean? Because it's like
But it's
some
it's interesting that I can't think of another time where that people had such like a platform, no, like to be able to
I know.
speak against things as much as we have today, whether it's social media or
For better or for
whatever.
worse, right? I
Yeah,
mean, depending on how you look
I
at
feel
it.
like Greg just shut off his laptop. That means he's gonna go to sleep.
Did I
Is it?
shut my laptop off?
I feel like you just went a little dark on us.
No, I didn't.
I can't see you anymore.
Oh no, what happened? I,
Oh no, guess we gotta go.
oh no, is that the end?
Wow.
Conspiracy. I didn't shut my laptop off. We're still on it. I'm talking to you.
Okay, a light
But
bulb.
I guess that is the end. Dave, should probably have shared it in the beginning, but Patreon, still working on growing that.
Yeah,
Rate and
everybody, hop
review.
on over. What's your problem?
Yeah, hop on over.
Like, hop on over,
Please.
or
Patreon.
or
Coach
we're
us.
or we're pissed.
We're starting to get a little pissed.
Look at me, I'm pissed right now. You
I'm
know how I
starting
know
to
I'm
get a little
pissed?
pissed. Come on to Patreon so you can see the video of me being pissed.
You know how I know I'm pissed? You can see it in my eyes right now because I'm doing this thing with my eyes. I'm pissed.
Squinty eyes. They can't see it unless they come onto the Patreon.
Yeah, if you want to see me look pissed, come on over. Hop on over.
Please.
I dare you. Want to see
Please.
me pissed off? I dare you.
Dave, what do you
And
think?
leave a freaking rating
Oh
and
yeah, for God's
review.
sakes. Come on, get
For
on that
God's
Spotify.
sakes. Greg, for God's sakes. Holy smokes.
Holy smokes. Okay.
All right. I guess we're done here.
Yeah, we're done here.
All right. Everybody, have a great night. That was Conspiracy Theories.
It was.
We're Greg and Dave. And
And
you're
we'll be back
excellent.
next week with something.
Yeah, with something. Have a great night. See you later.